Hey, this week we are talking about rolling, self-massage for the glute muscles. And first I'm going to give you a little crash course in the anatomy of the pelvis and just a little bit how your leg bone connects to that. Those things are both important because the glute muscles attach on and around this area of your body. So having a little bit of anatomical knowledge can help you to visualize those muscles and roll them out a little bit better. So your pelvis has two ears to it. You could imagine them, kind of like elephant ears that curve around and they form almost like a bowl, and they come together in the front way down low at your pubic symphysis, and at the back they wrap around and they kind of snuggle up right against your sacrum tailbone area, that inverted triangle at the base of your spine. So you can kind of think about your pelvis as a bowl. And so you have those two little hip points in the front, and you can take your fingers and just follow from those hip points right along the bony part. And it actually comes up quite a bit higher than you might imagine. So keep following it back with your thumbs. Good. And it comes down right to that point we were just talking about. And then you have your femur, your leg bone, and the top of that leg bone, you could imagine, it sits like this in your hip socket. And at the top of that leg bone, on the outside edge, you can feel, and you might have to just feel around a little bit, there's kind of this bony protuberance or bump out called your greater trochanter. And so those are kind of the bony landmarks that you can feel for and keep in mind as we start to talk about these muscles. So you have three glute muscles: glute max, glute med, and glute min. And then another muscle that you might have heard of before that people often talk about is your piriformis muscle, is also part of your glutes. So why are these muscles important? They're huge muscles, relatively speaking, in the body. Glute max is anyway. But their function is to move our hip and leg around. So, doing things like coming out to the side and bringing it back. They also help to stabilize our pelvis. And our pelvis is a huge part of our posture. So if there's something going on in your glutes, whether they're weak or they're tight, or one muscle is working more than the other, it's likely or possible that the rest of your posture might be impacted by that. So let's get to rolling, and you can use, if you have a set of the yoga tune-up balls at home, either of the sizes is fine, the original or the plus. I'm going to use the original to start, and what you're going to do is you're going to take them out of their little tote if you have these. You can also use a tennis ball or a rubber ball. I would not recommend like a lacrosse ball or a softball or anything that's too hard like that. You want something that has a little bit of give to it. So you're going to need whatever type of ball you're using, and then you're going to come to the wall. And you're going to locate again that greater trochanter, the top of that leg bone. Good. And what we're going to do is the action we're creating is rolling the ball around that bump out. And so you're going to start, and this takes a little bit of finagling. You're going to press the ball against the wall, and you'll feel if you need to adjust it up or down. And then you're going to start to circle around. So for me, I found the best way to circle around is to lift that foot that is against the wall and create circles that way. And so I'm kind of using my other arm to brace, and I'm just drawing circles around that bony part of the greater trochanter. Some of your glute muscles come out and attach there. And you might do a few circles and then need to adjust. You can also do kind of like this chugging sort of like train motion, the locomotion. Good, and you can go in both directions. Good, and you can also do this from the floor. It's a lot more weight, first of all, if you're going to do it from the floor. But yeah, you could experiment that way also. Good. And then my rule, if you're using the yoga tune-up balls, when I switch sides, I switch which ball I'm using so that they get worn evenly. So I'm going to find again on this side that bump out at the top of my leg. Good. And then I'm going to take my ball and pin it against the wall. And then whatever you want to do, you can lift that leg to create those circles around that bony bump out. You could do foot down and kind of do this rocking, rolling sort of motion. But you're circling the ball around that little bump out, your greater trochanter. Good, and then go the other direction. Okay, and then you're going to catch your ball. And the next thing we're going to do, so if you can imagine your sacrum is sort of like this inverted triangle. And so it's what sits, like we were talking about earlier, it's what sits kind of right where the ears of your pelvis start to come together. And so imagining this inverted triangle, you're going to start on one side of that, and you're going to take your ball awful close and onto that one side of your sacrum. And so what we're doing with the ball is we're rolling off and on all along our sacrum. And so I'm going to take my ball and pin it against the wall. Good. And I'm going to start like a little bit higher up on that kind of edge of my sacrum. And I'm going to lean into that. And so you have control over how much weight you put into this. You can step your feet further away and it's going to drive more weight into the wall, or you can walk your feet back towards the wall and it's going to be less weight into the wall and the ball. Good, and so what I'm aiming to do is I'm just kind of wiggling the ball off and on that little edge of my sacrum. And then I'm going like up and down that, along that edge. And so this is where some of your glute muscles originate. And sometimes if you can work on the origin or the insertion of a muscle where it gets a little bit more tendony, it helps to relax the belly of the muscle, the meat of the muscle. Okay, so after you've done that sacrum wiggle on one side, you're going to switch balls if you have to, and you're going to switch sides. And you're going to go just kind of off and on and off and on. And so a nice bend in your knees usually feels good. And so I'm going all along that edge. Good. And then you're going to catch your ball. And the next thing we're going to do is roll along, not quite the crest of our hips, but just below that. So all along the ilium is the anatomical term for it. And so if you want to trace that line again to remind yourself from that bony hip point, you can kind of trace that line back. We're going right below that. So you're going to take your ball and you're going to pin it. I'm going to start at the back. So I'm pinning it just outside and just above of where we were just working on our sacrum. So I'm going to pin it against the wall. And then again, find where you want your feet. And then I'm going to start to turn into the wall and away from the wall. And so that's going to create that rolling action along the top ear of that pelvis. And just back and forth a couple of times. Glutes can be a tender spot to work, so back off of it, walk your feet closer to the wall if you need to. Good, and then after you've done a few of those, catch your ball and you're going to switch sides. And so pin your ball kind of just above and outside of where we were working on that sacrum, right against the wall. Find what feels comfortable for your feet, and then you're going to start to turn into and away from. And so that into and away from action is creating this nice roll along the top ear of your pelvis. And if it's helpful to you, anatomy can be a really visual thing. So just Google, anatomy of the pelvis or pelvis, and then you'll get a really good image of what I'm talking about with the ears and how they come together and how they fit into that relationship with your sacrum and your tailbone. Okay, good. When you're done with that side, you're going to catch your ball, and then you have the option here of staying at the wall, which is going to give you a little bit more control and less pressure, or you have the option of taking this to the floor. And I'm going to demo it both ways, and I'm going to switch my balls because I like to use these bigger balls. It's a little bit less pressure and it just feels better in my body. You can keep using your tennis ball, or you can keep using the original yoga tune-up balls if you like those. So you're going to again take them out of their tote if you have them in one. And for this one, you're going to take it kind of to the meat of your glute muscle, like right in on your butt. Okay, so if you're at the wall, you're just going to do one at a time, and you can start to turn that foot out and in as you're pinning the ball into the wall. Good, out and in. Okay. And so this is your option for at the wall. You might also do wiggle around, explore. You're not going to hurt yourself. You'll know if something is too much or painful or not a productive movement. So you can play around, position the ball in a couple of different ways and turn that foot out and in. Always staying with your breath. Good. And your option here, if you want to come to the floor, you're going to take both balls at the same time. And you're going to come onto your back. I like to come there first. So onto your back, and then similar placement. You're going to lift your glutes, and you could do this one at a time. I kind of like to do both at the same time. And so the position of them is kind of just down and outside of your sacrum. Good. And then you're going to wiggle your feet closer together and then let them drop out into a butterfly or diamond shape. And I am a big wiggler, so I like to do a little wiggle side to side. And you can adjust your upper body. You might move where the balls are. And then if you want to play around, you can start to do kind of butterflying your knees up and down, and just notice that movement of your leg, how it affects the sensation in your glutes. And you could do one at a time. You could do two at a time, whatever feels best and is productive and tolerable in your body. Good. And then you might just find another position of the balls, and then do again just kind of variations of moving your knees, maybe at the same time, maybe a little wiggling, maybe one at a time, maybe it's one up, one down. Really for you to decide and just feel into what makes sense in your body. And also don't underestimate the power of just sitting, holding, letting something really open. So you might pause here and just let your legs fall open. Continue to follow your breath in and out. Good. And then whenever you feel satisfied, you can start to draw your knees together. Walk your feet a little bit apart, press down into the floor, slide your balls out, and then just gently return your sacrum, your glutes to the floor. And then again, I like to do a little wiggle side to side. Good. And then you can just gently make your way up. Good. That's what I've got for you this week. A little bit of pelvis anatomy. Google it, check it out. If you're confused or can't quite visualize what I'm talking about, it will be helpful to you to understand where those glute muscles are. Let me know if you have any questions about how to roll your glutes, or if you need a modification for anything that we did. I'm happy to answer your questions. That's what I've got for you this week, and I'll see you next week.